Very good. So I'm welcoming you to this most recent series of now 11 building electrification webinars. During this time, we featured dozens of people while spreading the word that building electrification is a way to go. And tonight we have one guest, Professor Bob, to discuss the IRA. He brings money to you, so you ought to welcome him. This is of utmost importance, in fact, to the United States for widespread greenhouse gas reductions. And then after Bob, myself and my wife will give an interesting talk about solutions to the climate crisis. So I'm really pleased to introduce Professor Bob Morrow, a retired professor who has been a member of Citizens Climate Lobby for 3 years. He gave a presentation to CCL about the Inflation Reduction Act in late October, and I was so enamored that I asked him to share his information with us. And so with Bob, take it away.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I count myself a climate activist, but Steve and Pat Miller are climate activist superheroes. And me, I'm really just a Clark Kent level at this point. So let me share my screen here and bring this up. Okay. So these slides are our Citizens Climate Lobby slides, as you can see from this title at the bottom here, about the Inflation Reduction Act. I've called this an introduction because it's going to be a fairly short talk, maybe 20 minutes. And I'm just going to touch on some basic stuff because the Inflation Reduction Act is vast and complicated. One request I'd have for everybody, if you would please hold your questions and just put them in the chat. You see the icon at the bottom there that says chat. Just click that and you can type something in. And Pat is going to be kindly monitoring those so that we can do the questions at the end of the talk. Okay, well, the standard set of slides has this slide, and so I've sort of been introduced already very well. But I'm a retired history professor, unlike Pat and Steve, we're both engineers. I'm a history professor, and I was at Morgan State University in Baltimore for my teaching. Okay, three things I want to touch on here. Let me see if I can get rid of this so I can see my own slides here. Okay, 3 parts to this. Part 1 is the Inflation Reduction Act's goal, which is big emission cuts. Second part is how does it accomplish this goal? There I'm going to talk about, give you sort of a little sample of some of the parts of the act because it's so large that, well, we'd probably need an hour to go through all of it. Even the talk that I gave at CCL, which was about 45 minutes, just gives you, even that doesn't even cover the whole thing. So that's part 2. And then part 3, we're going to look at the Rewiring America Savings Calculator, which is a really nice website you can use to figure out, which of the various, let's face it, subsidies the federal government is providing for people to make the changes needed to electrify their homes, electrify their cars. It will sort of customize the list for you based on your income and some other things. But anyway, we'll go over that in some detail. Okay. The first thing to touch on, I have to make my screen move. There we go. First thing to touch on is the overarching point here, that the Inflation Reduction Act is a huge step forward in the fight against climate change, bigger than anything the United States has done before. And it promises at this stage to make big pollution cuts, something in the neighborhood of 40% by 2030. Because of course we have a goal set by the Biden administration to cut climate pollution by 50% by 2030. Okay, so I want to go over this kind of nice little set of graphs we have here. That talk about the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions by the United States. And let me just briefly touch on the slide we have here, the way the graph is set up. Like most graphs, the bottom line is the timeline, and you see that it concludes in 2030 with, obviously our goal point for having 50% reductions, but it starts in 2005, and that points to the important point that this is our benchmark date against which, when you say you're going to have 50% reduction, it's 50% reductions from the 2005 level. And if you look up here at the top of the y-axis, if you remember your high school algebra, the y-axis, we've got 6,600 million tons of CO2 and its equivalent greenhouse gases being emitted by the United States. Okay, and you see that that only goes down to 3,300 because, of course, that's our goal, cutting it in half. And what you see here is a graph of the historical progress so far, the decline. And so you can see the United States has reduced its emissions over this time period, principally by replacing coal with natural gas. Okay, so if we go on to the next chart, we start looking at some projections forward from that. And these are coming from these think tanks that study energy consumption, study climate change in great depth. I've read bits and pieces of some of their reports, and it's pretty serious and pretty scholarly. Some of the names, Princeton and Rhodium and Energy Innovation, for example, are some of these modeling groups. And this first version of predicting is the business as usual version. If we just continue with what we're doing, without the energy, without the Inflation Reduction Act, you see the business as usual line declines and gets us to about a 27% cut. So we're just over halfway to our 2030 goal. So we have to do something more than this one way or the other. So if we go on to this next slide, here you see their forecasts for if the Inflation Reduction Act really works and people take up the challenge, you can see that they're estimating something in the ballpark of 40% reduction here in this middle. But you see there's a big range, and so there's even the possibility that we might almost reach our goal just with this piece of legislation. Okay, so this gives you sort of a picture where we're at in terms of the emissions. Let me go on to sort of my second part, which is how does the act actually accomplish these emission cuts? And to put it simply, the act empowers the government to give money in the form of grants, tax credits, and rebates to people, individuals, businesses, state and local governments to make the changes that we need to reduce U.S. emissions of greenhouse gases. And you can kind of see our list of folks there. But the most important point, as far as I'm concerned, is this second dot point. The act relies on people and institutions to take up the challenge. In essence, when they passed this particular act, after there had been, a couple of decades of various proposals for how you tackle climate change, they opted to really, except for one small item, well, not so small, but one item, all of the act is really incentives. And if you go back to the old metaphor about trying to get the mule to move, you can do two things. You can dangle a carrot in front of the mule's nose, and the carrot will act as an incentive to get the mule to move. And if the carrot doesn't work, you got to hit him with the stick. So it's carrots and sticks. But this act is almost entirely carrots, which means that we're relying on people and institutions to actually, as my chair at our local Citizen Climate Lobby chapter says, we're counting on people eating the carrots. And so we because it's voluntary, we're really at the mercy of the American public and the American business world, and of course the state and local governments. So now, just for a small sampling of the kinds of programs that are included in the Inflation Reduction Act, I want to take 3 slides and just talk about just a few, because just to give you a little feeling for what the act includes. If you look at what cities might be able to get money for, one is to improve energy efficiency. The government would grant credits and rebates for example, state and local governments improving the energy efficiency of their government buildings. And it's an interesting point here to talk about credits and rebates. A lot of the money available in the act is in the form of tax credits. Well, if you stop and think about it, there are a lot of entities that don't pay taxes. State and local governments don't pay federal taxes. Nonprofit institutions don't pay federal taxes. So how are they going to possibly benefit? Well, the tax credits are set up so that in circumstances with nonprofit entities, they can turn those tax credits into direct payment to contractors who are making changes in buildings. Or, as in my second dot point, you have, on the other hand, you have rebates, and rebates in much of the act refer to actual reductions in the bottom line purchase of something. So, you know, the borough of Red Bank goes to buy an EV garbage truck, they will be able to get a rebate, i.e. a cut in the price, and the federal government paying part of the price of those garbage trucks. Okay, going on to another group of potential recipients for this government largesse, farmers and foresters, for example. And these two groups have an important role to play in fighting climate change because they grow plants and trees that can absorb CO2 and can fix it in the soil. And so they have a lot of potential to help on that end when, let's face it, we ordinarily think of, you know, car pollution and power plant pollution, but there's also this end where they can actually do something positive. But the problem is these groups don't have a lot of money on hand to be buying new equipment, to be doing various things that involve getting money. So they really need the help. And in this case, I want to just give you a feel for some of just a few names of the programs to give you a sense of how vast this thing is. We have conservation programs like the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which is going to provide at least $20 billion for climate smart agriculture and forestry projects. The Rural Energy for America program is tasked with handing out $2 billion for rural clean energy. The Landscape Scale Restoration Program is going to have $450 million available to get private landowners to adopt climate smart forestry practices. And the Forest Legacy Program has $700 million for preserving forests on private lands. So we've got a whole variety of things in this particular realm. And let me do one more of these just to sort of round this out with a community, with a part of America that has become a really important concern in the climate activism world. And that is disadvantaged communities, or what are called frontline communities, or environmental justice communities in the parlance of climate activism. Disadvantaged communities suffer from a disproportionate share of pollution and the effects of climate change. And so the Act really makes a particular point of trying to address their needs. And they can get, for example, money for community-led projects where they identify a problem to reduce pollution at transportation hubs like ports, railways, and airports, and to reduce pollution at schools. And that's why I picked up this graphic, because here are the boys practicing football, and you can see these power plants and stuff in the background. But another example of a way in which the Act addresses the needs of disadvantaged communities is grants for energy efficiency and affordable housing. Okay, now, so that gives you some sense of the breadth of the program and some of the areas that it addresses. I want to go on to my third part, which I think of as probably being of most interest to the people in this webinar, and that's the Rewiring America Savings Calculator. And you can see up here at the top the URL for that. And I want to talk about this a little bit and then demo it and show you sort of how it works and how much stuff it's got there, because let's face it, you know, something that's interactive is much more fun if you can type in some numbers and see what comes up. This will help you get a handle on the programs that you might be able to use to reduce your carbon footprint. The home, and let me talk about some of the things that are included in this that would be things that ordinary homeowners, for example, would be able to take advantage of. For example, heat pumps for heating and air conditioning, heat pump water heaters, electric clothes dryers, electric stoves, electric cars, my personal favorite, home weatherization like improved insulation and windows, rooftop solar and battery storage, and then last and least a romantic wiring and breaker box upgrades, because when you're adding 220-volt lines for an electric stove or electric dryer or for a EV charger, you're going to have to call up your electrician and have them work on your electric service. And then to sort of talk what's on the screen here, there are both rebates and tax credits. And as my bottom doc point says, you know, rebates versus tax credits, I've already sort of touched on this. Rebates take money off at the front end when you're purchasing something. The price of the EV goes down when you get money from the IRA. And tax credits, you don't get any money up front. You have to pay the full price, but you can then get a tax credit. Oh, okay, this part of the money I spent, I'm going to take off of the taxes I owe to the federal government. But if you look at the rebates, they are tied to household income levels, okay? One level for low-income households and another level for moderate-income households. Now, low-income households, as the slide says, can get 100% cost coverage. Just to give you a ballpark idea of this, you have to key these numbers to the annual household income of a particular median income of a particular area, AMI, annual median income of a particular area. And the areas are that what level of area they're going to use is not clear. Someone had said they were going to be census tracts. I'm not sure that that's right. Because when I looked at the census tracts that they had on the link, all of Red Bank had 4 census tracts and they all had the same income level. And I know Red Bank well enough to know that the income levels are not going to all be the same between those 4 census tracts. But so I just took Monmouth County as a whole and took its annual median income level. And if you take it, you then modify the annual median income level. You take 80% of it, and that's the top level for low income people. So The people who are eligible for 100% cost coverage, if they were using that Monmouth County level figure, it would be people with an annual income, a household income of up to $83,000 a year. Likewise, the moderate income level would be 83,000 to 155,000. The 155,000 figure is 1.5 times the annual median income for the area. And so that gives you those numbers. And so that gives you a sense of who might be able to get the nice rebates and which people with incomes higher than 155,000, if they were using these particular numbers, would have to rely on the tax credits. Because the tax credits are not as generous. They're like 30% of the cost of a lot of things, for example. Okay, so moving on. So let's take a look at the Rewiring America Savings Calculator. Okay, here's the Rewiring America web page, and it's got all this other nice stuff in it that I have to be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to look at particularly. But up here in the upper right-hand corner is the Inflation Reduction Act Savings Calculator. So you click on that and you get to how much money will you get with the Inflation Reduction Act? Oh boy. And so you have this little window.
Are you showing this, Bob?
Oh boy. Yes, I'm trying to.
I think you have to unshare
Yes,
and
yes.
reshare
I'm sorry.
again.
You're right. I made this mistake before. I should have learned my lesson. Hold on a sec. Let me do this. Okay. Stop sharing. And let me start sharing again and share the right thing this time. Okay, let's try that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Good. That's what I want to hear. Okay, good. So back to how much money will you get with the Inflation Reduction Act? Okay, so it has these 5 fields you fill in so that it can kind of figure out where you fit in these calculations. You put in your zip code, and I've put in Red Bank zip code. Homeowner status, and you can pick between homeowner or renter. Now here, my wife and I are renters actually, but that produces a display later on, a list later on that's very short. It says you can get money for an EV, and that's about it. Then you put in your household income over here, and your tax filing in this 4th box, which gives you single, joint, or head of household, and I put in joint, and then number of people in the household. We've got 2 in our household, but you can see it'll go up to 8. And then you put, whoops, let's not put it on 1 though. Put it on 2. Okay, and you hit calculate. And then you roll down here and it starts to tell you upfront discounts. Nuh-uh. Available tax credits. Lots of tax credits available. Estimated bill savings per year. I'm not quite sure what that is, but you know, I'm sure it's self-explanatory. Now there's some interesting stuff here, some disclaimers and stuff. And this little yellow box here has a link right here. Check out this relevant case study, it says. And I would recommend that if you're going to go and use this, that you actually start with this little case study. And I'll explain why. Because what the case study tells you about is reaching for resilience. A well-resourced Oklahoma family electrifies for security and the climate crisis. And this is a little story, in essence, laying out what it would take to do a full electrification of their home and their car using the IRA. And one of the basic lessons you learn from reading this is that this is not something you're going to do the first year and say, well, I'm going to buy my EV, I'm going to get a heat pump, and I'm going to get a heat pump water heater, an electric dryer, and the whole list. No, you can't do it that way, because there are caps on how much you can claim per year. And this sort of explains how you would then stage the process of fully electrifying your home and automobiles. So here is the very interesting list of all the different things that you might be eligible for. A battery storage installation, if you've got rooftop solar, geothermal heating installation, which relates to one kind of heat pump, which I'm sure Pat and Steve know all about, but which is sort of not what I expected. Sort of a different kind of heat pump from what I've heard of. Electric panel work, electric vehicle charger, a new EV, heat pump, etc. You can sort of read through it yourself. I'm in the process of buying an EV. I put in an order last Friday for a Chevy Bolt EUV, which if all goes well, I'll have in 3 months. So there's a long wait. The EV market is very, very hot right now. And the act has, until the end of the year, muddied the waters a bit. So you see timeline here in this chart, and it says 2023 because one of the first things it tells you in this page here, when you click on it for more information about, oh, I got the wrong one, this EV charger, get the one on the vehicle itself. There we go. Electric vehicles. One of the things it tells you here is there is an existing EV credit that will be replaced with this one in 2023. And there's some problematic overlaps right now from the old EV tax credit to this new one. But just to give you a sort of sample of what this looks like, there's an entry at the top in each case that talks about very briefly what this is, and in this case that that actually you can actually get money too for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles as well. And as you scroll down, it explains some more things to you, how the tax credit works. And in this case, as any of you who've paid any attention to the EV situation know, when the tax credit goes into effect totally at the beginning of next year, cars, ordinary automobiles, you can only get money for those that cost $55,000 or less, and vans, SUVs, and pickups. They can cost as much as $80,000 and still be eligible for the money. Just to give you an example, the Bolt that I ordered is around $33,000, so it's way below that, but it's like at the bottom of the range. A lot of the cars that you'll see are in this 50,000s range. For example, the Ford Mustang would put you in this general vicinity. There is also a tax credit on used EVs to the tune of $4,000. But then you scroll down a little further, and it does kind of a nice introduction to each of these things. It talks about, you know, the practicalities of EVs and sort of introduces people to EVs in this "how does it work" section. How will it save me money? It talks about some of the ways that an EV saves you money. It's less expensive to fuel than a gasoline fueled car, and it has a lot less maintenance. Why is it better for the environment? I think we can kind of figure that one out. And other benefits, like it's fun to drive, for example. So it takes you through each of these various parts of the electrification process, so to speak, that are possible. And this is the list, again, of tax credits, okay? Now, if you scroll down a little further, you've got upfront discounts, and you'll notice actually at the bottom of the tax credit one, used electric vehicle. Well, my income level that I put into the thing at the top doesn't mean I'm not eligible for that used vehicle credit. And you'll notice that the upfront discounts, i.e. when you buy it, you pay less. There's none of these that you get at that income level. except for this whole home energy reduction. Now that one, to be perfectly honest with you, that one's a little less concrete than like a heat pump and a little bit confusing to me. So I'm not going to try and get into that one, but you can read their information about it and they lay it out pretty nicely. So that gives you an idea what this web page will do for you to sort of get you started on this. And in fact, interesting, I might add this last little thing here. This whole home energy reduction program, contacting a contractor to do one of those might be a good place to start. It's one of the things it talks about in that case study, is that you might start with this because that's somebody who can kind of help you see the whole picture and help you map out which changes you're going to make, which years to fully electrify your household. Okay, so I'm going to need to stop sharing from this, and I've just got a concluding slide that I'm going to flash back to, get back to my my slides. Okay, where we left off. Okay, a concluding slide. What's still left to do? Well, this is kind of important, and here again, I'm kind of back to the top level view. And I would add the CCL view. There's still things to be done. First of all, right off the bat, local and state governments are going to have to implement the funded programs. And so they've got to do their part. And goodness knows, with the divisions in this country politically, I'm concerned about how that part's going to go. And second dot point is one of my main points, that because this is all incentives, because it's voluntary, people and institutions have to take up the challenge and use this money that's out there. And last of all, you'll remember that on that first set of graphs I showed, there's still 10% to go. So, you know, hopefully we get to 40% with this, which is kind of what they're figuring we'll be able to get to. Although, you know, to what degree that's optimistic, who knows at this point. But there's probably 10% left, which means we're going to have to do yet more. Okay. And that might take the form of several different possible means. I'll just touch on CCL's pet thing, which they call the carbon fee and dividend, which is really a carbon tax at the point at which some user of fossil fuels pays a tax, like a oil refiner or a someone who's using coal, some power plant that's buying coal. When they buy it, they pay a tax, and one would expect them to pass that through. And when they do, then consumers are going to pay more. But that's where the dividend part comes in. The government would collect those taxes, not keep any of it, and pay it back to the citizens to help soften that blow. So far, of course, an added tax in America is not a very popular proposition right now with politicians. So CCL's PET solution has not gotten a lot of traction. So I'll quit at that point, and thank you for listening. There's my name again, my email, and my phone number. And feel free to particularly drop me an email if you have further questions after tonight. So let me stop my share and we'll go back to all the people. Okay. Questions?
So we have a little time for questions. There was one question about what year the income refers to, and I'm thinking it has to be a year that you've already filed an income tax for, so it's got to be at least a year or two in the past.
Right. Yeah, I confess there's a lot of details to this that I'm not really up on. And there's a lot of details that are hard to get to. I really worked on the EV one, and I've read what the IRS says and what the Department of Energy says and stuff. And there's some lacking some details at this stage. So yes, but that's a good question.
There's a question about adding a heat pump when you already have existing home HVAC that might be gas or whatnot. I think if you put the equipment in and it's eligible for a rebate, that you get it no matter what else you have with it, and you get it for obviously for replacements. Well, this is only replacements because it
Right.
can't be new construction.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's interesting. You guys would know that stuff better than I. Would one put a heat pump in addition to an existing natural gas system? And is there a way to
Oh yeah, we're
coordinate
going
two
to
of
tell
them?
you about that.
Okay, well,
So
there you go. See, so
just
you're
hold
really deep
on
in that
for
stuff.
5 or 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Well,
The last one, maybe Steve can talk about this, because it's about a nonprofit wants to install solar, and what do they do about this tax credit or rebate?
Right.
And
Right.
we can just tell them, Steve, you have to be not on mute if you're going to answer the question. But if you can tell them how we did it in UUCMC.
Oh, there you go.
Well, what we did in our congregation.
And this was not the IRA. This was previous to that.
We relied on a vendor who actually was the party that collected that 30% tax credit and depreciation. And so their cost was lower because of that. Our congregation was not eligible, but with the IRA, the congregation will be eligible.
That's awesome.
It's interesting because the solar tax credit is effective now. And I don't know when nonprofits will be eligible. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Okay, I think that's all.
Let me raise one thing. So the Sierra Club will have a talk on IRA the end of the month. I think it may be November 30th, but I'm not sure. And what I'll do, and maybe they'll have more information then. So I'll be sure I circulate the invitation to you all. And that will help answer maybe some of the questions we can't answer today.
Okay. Good.
The last question was, what is the IRA? It's the Inflation Reduction Act that went through so many conniptions to get passed in the last few months. Right. But one other thing is, and Bob, maybe you can answer this. This person says, I went to the calculator online. I can't find the case studies on the website. Can you send a link to the case studies, please? Oh. And if you can you just put it into the chat?
Yeah. Let me give that a try.
Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead because we're running a little bit behind.
Okay. Yeah.
And I, Pat Miller, am the next speaker. And this talk is actually going to be by Steve and myself, and I think you probably all at least know Steve, who is listed under New Jersey Sierra Club host, but that's Steve Miller. And because he's been the moderator of all these webinars this year, and I've been on most of them also. But for our formal introduction, we've been climate activists working together for many years. And during our working lives, we were engineers and managers at the former Bell Labs and its successor companies our entire career. We've become a lot more active at advocating for the climate since retirement. So I'll just stop there and share my screen and get on with the slides. Okay. All right. I probably should have done this first. Okay. I want to make a point, a very basic point to begin with. We always talk about this, but just to make sure that everybody knows, the source of most of the greenhouse gas emissions in New Jersey are in these top 3 bars here: transportation, residential and commercial buildings, and electricity generation, in that order by magnitude. And this is from an official New Jersey study on the status of our global warming response. So this is for all of New Jersey. I'm a little bit handicapped here because I hurt my arm and it doesn't quite work entirely right. Okay, so here are the things that we intended to address and which we recommend that everyone does: electricity generation, transportation, residential and commercial buildings. And I'm going to talk about what we did in our home personally, and then after that, Steve is going to talk about what we did in our congregation, but with the same goal. So the first thing is to switch to 100% electricity. And you can do that in one fell swoop in any one of these ways. First, you can install rooftop solar. And this is the best way if you're able to do it. You get up to a 30% tax credit from the IRA and more from the IRA if you also install battery storage. And remember, when we talk about these numbers in the IRA, it's always going to be income dependent. So you very likely might get less than the maximum, but this is the maximum. The second way to switch to 100% clean electricity is via a third-party supplier. And we do have a website. Steve maintains a website where you can compare the prices of different third-party suppliers. Right now, that's more expensive than some of the others, so it's not really a great choice at this point. The third choice is to invest in or subscribe to community solar, and that one is just coming online, that it's actually available to anybody. It's been in pilot in New Jersey for the last couple of years. And one company that has it available now in both PSE&G and JCP&L territory is that website you see, arcadia.com. So you can actually do that right now. And the fourth choice is also not a very good choice at this, because it's to switch to a third-party supplier for the entire town. And since these are more expensive now, that's not the greatest idea. But Steve is the person who keeps up on what the prices of all these are, and he has some experience and advice to give.
I sure do. So for the previous 5 or 6 years, renewable electric prices were from third parties were about 10% cheaper than from the local New Jersey utility. And then 1 year ago, the prices doubled. And I haven't found a rationale for that. But my advice is to wait. Don't sign up personally right now for third-party electric. Don't get your town or ask your town, because they're going to have the same problem of high price at this point. Just check if you're still interested in third-party. Wait till next year and then check my site, theelectric.smiller.org, for the current best deals. But there's much better deal right now that Pat talked about. You can subscribe directly from arcadia.com to the year 2 community solar projects, the ones that were constructed most recently, still being constructed. And there should be some openings, a lot of openings. There were 105 of these big systems. They are large community solar arrays located on brownfields, parking lots, big areas like warehouses, etc. And those currently sell for 21% lower than the JCP&L and presumably PS&G electricity price, the price to compare price on each of your monthly electric bills. So that is really a good deal now to subscribe and get yourself locked in to a nearby local community solar system.
Okay. We're going to show you what the Millers as individuals are doing. This is our house seen by Google Earth. We love the trees, and they're very effective at carbon sequestration. Trees and all plants breathe in carbon dioxide or CO2 and breathe out only the oxygen part of it, taking the carbon out of the air and storing it inside themselves or in the ground. But our trees are twice as high as the house, and there really is no solar to catch at rooftop level. So our choice for the time being is 100% third-party clean electricity supplier, which we bought a couple of years ago with a 3-year contract. And it was cheaper when we bought it, and it still is. But when the contract is up, then we're going to switch to something else. And what we bought was wind from Texas, which is not as good as having it locally, because if you have it locally, that creates local jobs. So the next step we took personally was to electrify our transportation. And we have a plug-in EV that was comparable in price to a regular hybrid. It's a Prius Prime plug-in hybrid. And we charge it in a regular household outlet. We didn't have to have a special charger. We just plug it in. So we get 100% clean electricity out of this plug. And so the car is 100% clean. It goes 30 miles on the charge before switching automatically to a hybrid engine. And the hybrid engine gets 65 miles per gallon, so it's very efficient. So here it's being charged in our garage, and the IRA gives up to $7,500 now for EVs. We didn't get that much, although we did get something, and 30% to install a charger. We've addressed clean electricity and transportation now, so we're up to buildings. The first thing to do in your home is to take energy efficiency measures. Insulate, seal air leaks, switch to LED lighting and smart thermostats. And always remember, the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. We had a home energy audit and took all the measures that they recommended. And what you see here is what amounts to a zippered refrigerator bag over the attic stairs on the left, and lots of additional insulation in the attic. The next step is to start now to switch household appliances to electric when they need to be replaced. And it'll take several years to do this, most likely. The most important and carbon intensive appliance to replace is the gas furnace or oil boiler or some other variation of this. Electric resistance heating is another thing to replace. When your old furnace, boiler, or whatever needs to be replaced, or your air conditioner needs to be replaced, you can switch to an electric heat pump for both heating and cooling. We've talked about this over many months, but presumably there are 1 or 2 people in the audience who don't know this. And the heat pump does the job of both the furnace and air conditioner It's much more efficient than either, and it provides cleaner, more comfortable air in your home. The IRA is supposed to cover up to $8,000 for installing a heat pump. And I don't know for sure whether it's the same for the geothermal or the air source. But I guess we'll get more guidance on that pretty soon. Other appliances you'll want to start replacing with electric are water heater, stove, and clothes dryer. And the IRA gives rebates in the hundreds of dollars for these. That's the maximum. And another benefit is that the more efficient electric appliances are getting cheaper. The electricity itself will be dropping in price as the percent renewable goes up. And the price of fracked gas and oil right now are really high because of Russia's war. They're at least 20% higher this winter, and they're predicted to be even higher than that later on, next winter. So last summer, one of our air conditioners stopped working. We probably could have had it fixed, but we had been waiting for the opportunity to install a heat pump to replace the air conditioner and to use our existing gas furnace as a backup. We had 2 furnaces and 2 air conditioners, one for each floor. We left the second floor as is and replaced the first floor air conditioner with a heat pump. The heat pump is the one on the right in this picture that you see on the left. On the left is the second floor air conditioner. On the right is the first floor heat pump. They look pretty much the same. We connected the heat pump to the first floor furnace for backup. Because our house has a large open area between the 2 floors, much of the heat rises to heat the second floor also. So we were able to cut our total gas usage by more than half with only the 1 heat pump. And we'll replace the second heat pump when we need to. On the right is the furnace, which is the backup. And it only comes on when it gets below, for us, about 20 degrees. And Steve is the one who did all of the calculations and went out for bids for these. And so he's going to tell you about his experience.
Yeah, that's not really easy because HVAC vendors are really not up to date on heat pumps. One way I understand to find out a good HVAC vendor is to call the distributor of heat pumps, the place that HVACs go to get the heat pumps, and ask who are the highest volume HVAC vendors who buy from you. And that will tell you which ones have the experience. Anyway, I wanted to have a dealer give me the lowest cost to replace only the exterior air conditioner unit and leave everything else untouched inside my house. My indoor furnace and air handler of our central ducted system is only 6 years old, and it has many years of remaining life. So I did my homework. I calculated my house heat loss. I described that in an earlier webinar. And I went to 8 dealers, and I was successful with only 1 local vendor who was a high volume installer of my brand of AC and furnace. And the result at this heat pump, which I purchased for about $4,900, works perfectly and cuts my seasonal frac gas consumption by a lot. We're using that 1 heat pump right now, and we'll continue to use it until we get very colder temperatures. And then I'll have to turn on the second floor gas to get higher temperatures upstairs. But I'll leave that heat pump going down to 18 degrees. So that's my story.
Okay, then just this fall, actually it was only about a month ago, our water heater sprang a leak. So we replaced it with an electric heat pump heater. And the IRA will soon, not not now, and we're not eligible, but it will provide a rebate of up to $1,750 for this heat pump.
Yeah, I have a lot of
We,
experience.
wait a second.
Sorry.
We actually got $750 from JCP&L. So that's one thing that I didn't mention. At least right now, there are state rebates, which come through the utilities, that are available for a lot of these things. And we don't know what's going to happen next year, whether they'll cut back on the state rebates or whether you'll get them both. But at any rate, so there are rebates. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I have replaced many hot water tanks in my life, and it's because water leaks. And after maybe 10 years, you better be careful. And all my cases, though, were drips, not geysers of water. And so I know to put pans under the tank to collect the inevitable leaks. Because our tank was getting old, I planned ahead. And I selected what you see is a Rheem heat pump water heater on the basis of reviews and descriptions of how it works. And I looked for availability. Once my old tank started dripping, I looked at Lowe's and Home Depot, and nothing was in stock that was heat pump. So I immediately ordered via Home Depot, and it got shipped to me from their warehouses. And I got delivery within a week. And we lived for that time with, when we wanted to have a shower, we turned the water on. Otherwise, the water was always off to the tank to avoid dripping.
Okay, one more thing. Well, actually, two more things. We also have a heat pump pool heater, and we got this a few years ago. We had a gas pool heater, and we had it for about 30 years. And Steve had fixed it multiple times. So when it finally went this time, we said, okay, this thing is dead. We're going to replace it with a heat pump pool heater. So we did that. You see where there was a gas line there, and it's retired now. We had to put in an electric box to supply the electricity. But that's what it looks like. In the pool, you can see sort of that big white thing on the right is the pool filter, and behind the pool filter are the steps, and then there's the pool. So Steve, your experience with this one.
Oh, sure. I knew a lot about pool heaters. I shopped online for a heat pump water heater, and I looked for the highest capacity I could get. And it turned out to be a wholesaler in Florida. He shipped directly to me for free to my house. And then I self-installed. It was a direct plug-in, basically, to the water fittings. But it needed a 240-volt circuit out there. So I contracted with a local electrician to install a second panel box to handle this and to make room for future 240-volt appliances. This was probably the first heat pump we installed.
Yes, it was. Okay, one more. We talked about the fact that you might need to have electrical work done. Well, when you're adding all of these electrical appliances and EVs, you're likely to find that you don't have enough circuits or even enough outlets in the right places available. And electrical work is needed. What we did at the time we got the pool heater was to have a second circuit panel put in, which is the one on the left, and this is in our garage, and enough circuits in there for all our future needs, which are shown on the right. And you can, the IRA provides up to $6,500 for the electrical work that you might need. And if you put in EV charger, up to 30% tax credit for the EV charger. So this has been an example of the path a person or a family can choose to take. And Steve is going to tell the rest of the story, which is for our congregation. So let me stop share. And you can go ahead, Steve.
Okay, you should see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the question is, what can we, if we join in groups of hundreds, basically, as a congregation or a business, do together? And so this is a little story about UUCMC, located in Monmouth County, and we have a 20-year progress report to net zero. We've actually achieved net zero. And I put together a bar chart that shows 20 years of greenhouse gas emissions from the UUC Meeting House. Back in 2003, we had 140,000 pounds of CO2 emissions per year. And we did a whole bunch of updates and we did an energy efficiency audit way back here and then stuck to it over many, many years. And it was finally in the last 2 years that we finally made a huge dent in our greenhouse gas emissions so that we're down around 25,000 pounds per year. But we're also offset by 40,000 pounds of sequestrated carbon by the trees on our 16 acres of property. It's a forest, unbuildable wetlands, but it's a forest. And what we did in these last 2 years is we were forced to to change our furnaces out because they developed holes in the air, the combustion chamber, and they were hazards. They were red flagged. And so the congregation voted to replace them, and we voted, after us telling our story, we needed to do this, to replace them with heat pumps. And the second thing we did is we covered our roof with solar panels. And those two things right there made a huge drop in 2022. It's estimated yet. I'm tracking it. By the end of the year, I'll know the result. And so these are the things that we did. It was a large number of physical changes, which made net zero possible at the end of 20 years. And it included insulation, ceiling, efficient lights, energy star appliances, and so on. There were emergencies. I talked about the most recent with the carbon monoxide from our existing furnaces. And we also had roof leaks. So we had to replace the roof. And so in 2022, we took advantage of the resulting new roof and installed the largest allowed rooftop solar system. We found that rooftop solar system to be very attractive. In fact, the income from that solar will not only pay for itself, but it also pays for the new roof on which it was installed. And our solar was donated by a congregation member. And this has happened many times over 20 years. When you describe, we want to do this for the climate, for the environment, to do our part, people donate a lot of high ticket things, and it's happened. We have a wall dedicated to memorial plaques for each of these benefactors of things to our congregation. So I mentioned we put in heat pumps for our furnaces. We have 6 furnaces. These were all air conditioners, and just swapped them out for heat pumps. Inside, because the problem we had with the leakage, we put in new gas furnaces as backup for very low temperatures. And this is up in top is a coil that connects to the outdoor compressors that are now heat pumps. So we have 6 of these around the congregation, the church, and we have 6 of these indoors at various spots. And this is our rooftop solar. I was on the solar committee for the last 2 years, and we've slaved over how do we do this? How do we fund it? Everything came together. We have 104 solar panels now. They're high efficiency panels. They're doing a super job of giving us electrical power. And they caused our total greenhouse gas emissions to drop a long ways. We're not talking about putting down solar the charger stations at various spots in the parking lot to charge the people. Increasingly, they're getting plug-in vehicles and EVs, and this will encourage them probably to get more. And the final thing I would just want to mention is, but it's a detailed discussion for another day, is drawdown. Drawdown's written by nearly 100 research scientists and writers that describes the highest 100 impact solutions to lowering emissions. And this is a part of it, a simplified version. And just for example, what you can do right now, most of these actions don't require a big lifestyle change on this chart. They don't detract from your quality of life. You can eat less meat. You can compost more. Biggest thing you can do is to travel less when using fossil fuel engines, because transportation in New Jersey is almost half of our total greenhouse gas emissions. And I wanted wasn't this slide?
Just skip that one.
Here, this is the slide. Okay, I wanted to drive home that electric heat pumps are the wave to the future. This shows U.S. household winter heating costs in the years 2022 to 2023. So it's right now what people are going to be paying. And electric heat pumps are sitting down here. This is U.S. average, $596 per heating season for electric heat pumps. Natural gas furnaces, the average is $931. And the big thing is that in 2 years, the gas prices have gone up 62%. All right. If people have right now propane, fuel oil, or electric resistance heaters, you got to get rid of those. They're multiple times higher in price. This, and they're projected here going higher and higher. You've got to get rid of them. And so you who have these things should be right now shopping. Take advantage of those IRA benefits, because you're going to save a lot of money. You'll save thousands per year. And here's what happens in New Jersey driving it home. So an average home in New Jersey could reduce its energy bills 30% by switching to heat pumps. And if you have a leaky house, we have a bunch of openings, cold winter winds are coming in. With improved weatherization, you can reduce your energy bills by 61% if you switch to heat pumps. And if you have fuel oil, I'm sorry for you, you're spending a lot, you could save 58% by switching to electric heat pumps. So this is my last slide, and let's go on to Q&A. It's 8:09 right now. Normally we allow to about 15 after, so we're open to questions.
Okay, I'll start with just what's in the chat. First of all, Bob did put the link to the Rewiring America, so that's in there. And he says, New Jersey has 8% greenhouse gas sequestration. Wow. And that's true. And it is wow. That's, we have a lot of trees in New Jersey, and we have a lot of wetlands and plant lands, and we're in good shape there.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of that technological sequestration, saying, wow, 8%, that's a lot of that. But
no.
I realized, no, you just mean trees. Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's trees. Yeah.
Well, and crops probably too.
The actual numbers in New Jersey are more like 6%, 6 to 8%, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's what he said, 8.
Yeah.
Are there any rebates for new construction? I don't think we saw that sort of thing.
I'd be surprised that there's not, but I have not seen any definition.
No, because they haven't passed any laws to upgrade the building codes very much, but it's usually the building codes that are what drives the energy efficiency in new construction.
No, I would suspect that the rebates and the tax credits are for purchase of So, I mean, you know, I would think it would work for brand new construction just as much as it would work for replacements. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess we'll find out. Let's see. Stephen Pat, would you be willing to share the name of the vendor? The one vendor from which we got a bid was named Manfredi, who is in Old Bridge. But we have uncovered some others in different parts of the state that are more comprehensive than what we have around here. And I don't, Steve,
Yeah.
I think you were going to put out a list at some point.
Yeah. Let me just add I have two names. One is in central New Jersey location. His name is Scott Nelson. And the second person I'd recommend is, and he has a big 25 employee, big operation, serves central New Jersey. And the other is Chris, I'll have to find his last name, who is up in northern Jersey, north of Route 78. And he also serves metropolitan New York. And both those people are really up on board on the latest technology. I will
It's
put those,
Wisniewski, isn't it?
yeah.
Chris Wisniewski?
Yeah, true. I will
I
put,
don't know how to spell it.
yeah, I can't offhand. I will put them in the chat right now.
Okay, here's a comment. JCP&L has a program to refund dollars for installation of EV chargers, including installation equipment. Yeah, this is one of the state things, and it may continue into the future. We just don't know whether they're going to change those. I think the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, is responsible for setting this sort of thing, and whether they do it every year, nobody can really predict that. Here's somebody besides me is going to have to answer this question. If you have a knob and tube wiring that prevents the use of insulation, I wonder if the IRA would cover that electrical work.
Maybe. I bet you it would. Up to some extent, but I bet you it would.
They also cover something for efficiency measures. So you might have to really change a lot of things. But I would think that depending on your income level, it would cover some of it. Do you have to have some weather protection for the heat pump outside? The only thing is it can't have snow covering the bottom of it where the air intake is. So they usually put it on about 4 or 5 inch feet. And otherwise it works all year round because it works in the summer and it works in the winter. So no, it's just like an air conditioner. It's out there uncovered. Let's see. How is electric heat pump more efficient than electric baseboard heat? Isn't a resistive wire baseboard heat 100% efficient in converting electricity to heat? Well, I know the answer. I don't know if I can explain it well, but it's because it doesn't convert electricity to heat. It draws the heat out of the air and simply blows it inside. And so a heat pump can be up to about 300% efficiency.
It can be higher than that, 500%. There's a theoretical maximum that's more like 10 or 1,000%, but I don't think we're there. Nowhere near there.
Let's see. The last picture of your church building looks like there are 2 window air conditioners. I thought the heat pumps could provide air conditioning. Can you explain?
I'd like to replace those when they need to be replaced. I'd like to put them with a window ledge heat pump. They do exist. They're being deployed now in New York City. And that's we still have a lot of work to do at UUCMC. And I'm part of the property team. So And we're all on board of trying to take care of the climate. So that was one of our changes. One of our,
Steve, that's the old part of the building, and that was
Yes.
not part of the upgrade. The
That's right.
upgrade was on the new part of the building, which is 30 years old, versus the old part of the building, which was built in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so when, yes, when that system starts to fail, then we will replace all those and upgrade that. The air conditioning and that's our daycare classrooms, preschool classrooms.
Thank you.
daycare Classrooms. So that's the conundrum.
Okay, the next one, I don't know if anybody's going to have an answer to this. Any idea if a heat pump is purchased early 2023 before the IRA is finalized, if the discount will or can be applied retroactively? I guess we're going to have to wait and see that one.
Yeah, but given that it's a tax credit, you're not going to be doing your 2023 taxes until March or April of 2024.
Oh.
So hopefully they get it resolved by then, and you would be in the 2023 time frame. So it would seem to me that it wouldn't be retroactive. It would be, you'd be in the right ballpark time wise, I would think. But then again, you know, I'm not the IRS.
All right, here's Steve. Do you know, how much did your total utility bill change when you made these modifications?
I said I was going to do that and look at it, but I have not. I really have not, except that I do know it's very noticeable that our gas bill went way down. Like it's a fraction of what it used to be. Our electric bill also is very noticeable. It went way up. So I'm not sure. At the minimum, I'm sure it's about roughly equal. I was driving that heat pump to the lowest possible temperature that I could make it go, and until it wouldn't work anymore, till it wouldn't heat enough, and that drew a lot of current, electricity current. I'm easier on it now because I know how it performs. So
well, it's not very efficient when you're doing that either.
But most of the time, like right now, today, last few days, it's been powering the house, and it's very highly efficient. It's probably around 4, which is pretty darn good, 400%.
Okay, let's see. What are income limits on IRA 50% versus 100% on household invest? I don't understand. It's misspelled.
The income limit.
Eric, what did you mean by this question?
Yeah, sorry, just chime in. I joined late, and I'm sorry, I apologize for that. The kids are finally down. I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. You know, the IRA is they're proposing it's you know, there's a couple different pots of money here. Clean energy vehicles is one pot. There's another pot of it's if you replace your windows and your doors, and then the third pot, I think there's 4, but it's $14,000, $14,000 for investments in your household, you know, a clean energy investments. And some of it.
Let me cut you off.
Yeah,
I think
ahead.
maybe you should wait to get the slides, because the slides talk about a lot of what you're asking.
Right.
And you'd be able to read them and digest them in real time if you do that.
I can just give him a quick
There's
answer.
$14,000. It's you know, depending on your income, it could be 100% covered, or it could be 50% covered, or it's not covered at all. So I was wondering if anyone had any sense.
Yeah,
of
no, real quick.
what
What the slides will tell you is the following. The 100% is for people whose annual income is 80% or less of the median income for the area in which they live. It's not clear what areas they're going to use, whether they're going to be census tracts or counties or boroughs or whatever. But that's for people with 80% of their area's median income. The 50% is for people who are between 80% and 150% of their area's median income.
That's part of the problem, is that I know the feds are still figuring out what is the area. Do you have any kind of a number?
No, well,
like,
I
what-
gave
like
you, I
ballpark?
give in the slides an example just using the Monmouth County a figure for annual
Cool.
median income, but no, it's not clear from what I know what the areas will be. Someone did say census tracts.
I think
All right,
that one of the sites used Fannie Mae as a reference.
Yes, and I've looked at the Fannie Mae ones, and I'm in Red Bank. There are 4 census tracts in Red Bank, and they all have the same income figure in the Fannie Mae, which makes no sense to me because some of those areas have just got to have lower income levels than other areas. I mean, you can, I don't know if everybody knows, but there's east of the tracks and there's west of the tracks, east side, west side.
I'm an Essex guy. I'm an Essex guy, so I understand, like, it's going to differ via region and however they define it. I just wonder if you were willing to put any kind of number out there. Yeah. And again, apologies for not joining earlier.
Okay, well, we are going to put the slides out so you can see those. And I don't know if you said the numbers that you had used as an example, Bob, but they were 83,000 and 150,000. They were the two cutoffs.
Yeah, exactly. The ceiling for low income to get 100% was 83,000 if you used a Monmouth County wide figure, and the middle income would be 83 to 150,000, 155,000. So that gives you some ballparks, but it's very hard to know what those would be because it'd be very different depending on how they slice and dice it.
Okay, I'm looking at the next question, which is, Steve did put some names of vendors in the chat. The next one is rooftop solar covers total AC during summer. I have one heat pump in an attic bedroom that probably helps. This doesn't answer the question about the Miller's utility bills, but it does show another type of benefit. Oh, well, yeah, the heat pump takes the place of the air conditioner.
Right.
I guess she's trying to give an example of how much of her house is covered. And someone said the last question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just pointing out that you don't have the benefits of solar energy directly because of your location in the beautiful woods, but that for people who do install solar, you can run quite a bit of electricity and without directly from your rooftop, without having to, at least in the summer, without having to, join community solar, which, I plan to do. I have, green energy. I signed up for green energy for my electricity too. But in the summertime, there's so much sun that it's really almost a moot point.
That's a good point. And I meant to make the point that doing your own rooftop solar gives you the most benefit. And definitely it doesn't matter whether it doesn't go up in price ever. And it doesn't matter what the cost of electricity from the grid is. You cover your whole costs and you get a payback very, very quickly when you have rooftop solar.
Yes, I can't wait to have an electric car that I charge directly from the sun. But
Someone
thank you
asked,
for
and
talking.
I remember this other comment in another presentation. I think they said, but below 37 degrees, the heat pump was less efficient and you would want to use a furnace. Well, it is less efficient, but I don't know that that's actually the cutoff for using less fossil fuel. So we think the cutoff is less than 37.
Yeah. So my El Cheapo heat pump that I put in place the air conditioner, I was aiming for low cost, is actually quite efficient, even down to 17 or 18 degrees. It's around a coefficient of about 2.2. So it's still 220% better than a baseboard heater at 17 degrees, which is pretty cold. So so they do pretty well, and that's a cheap heat pump. If I can show you. Can you see that?
No, Steve, we can't see that.
Okay. There are heat
And
pumps that are much more efficient.
Yeah, we don't have that much. There's one more question, and then we're going to have to call it an evening.
Yeah.
Don't heat pumps rely on electric resistance backup at low temperatures? Have you looked at any heat pumps that don't need backup heating in New Jersey?
Yeah, they exist. The thing I just tried to show you shows a bunch of them that exist that work down to -5 or -10. And so they exist. They're probably a little more expensive. And depends how much you want to pay. The cheapest thing to first install would be the resistive backup. So that, but then that's 100% versus the heat pump is always going to be well above 200%. So heat pump is efficient. Sorry. Yes. Pat, I have one final slide that's just a review of our upcoming December.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and this is it. It should be up on your screen. Matt Kavanaugh will be our featured speaker. He took 4 years to get net zero energy. He says he has a positive cash flow of 6% annual return on investment. And Eldon Spector has been on previous shows. He and 15 other associated families have reached net zero, and they, including their EVs. David Green has been on a previous show. He reached net zero, and he says he has a 15% per year return on investment, which is better than any long-term return from anything else I know of. That was before there was an IRA. I think with IRA, people are going to do much better. So it's possible to aim toward net zero and do it very strongly positive return on investment. That's our message for, you'll learn more on December 15th at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank everybody for holding out this long. We didn't mean to go this long, although we often end up doing it. And I hope I didn't rush anybody too much. I appreciate you being here and appreciate your attention, and hope you are interested enough in coming to the next one. So thank you from us.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Bye.
I'm going to let everybody.